Mummies, Chris. Mummies.
Oh, you need your mummy?
Mummy. Mama. Mama. Lots of them. What is it? 100 of them?
100 of them? 100 where?
100 mummies? 10 mummies? 1,000 mummies? 10 mummies? I don't know how many mummies we found.
Oh, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Several hundred.
Most of them were
Most
of them were turned into paint.
Most of them were turned into paint.
Yeah. You used to get something called mummy brown.
Yeah. Victorians, wasn't it?
Victorians, yeah.
Bloody Victorians. They used to put mummies in everything.
But I do imagine that paint lasts forever.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
There's a joke in there somewhere, but...
Are you smart enough to find it?
I won't find it. No chance.
Why is it that as soon as someone looks something up, we all start chatting about it? I wouldn't be bothered if it was electronic, but this was a book. Well, you know. We create content for you guys and gals and things in between. Therefore, we needed to draw inspiration from you lot. Off topic, but Chris, that is a fresh looking haircut. Nice.
Thank you, Michelle.
Someone's trying to suck up to you. Clearly. Who wants to suck up to me then?
Nobody, because you don't like being sucked up.
I don't like getting sucked up to.
That was an ace joke, Liam. An ace joke.
An ace joke? What's an ace joke?
Oh, it's what people in the know would call asexuals. They're aces.
Ace joke. Okay. Oh, wow. You're both alive. Oh, well, that's a great compliment. We are both alive, which basically means whatever you tried to do obviously failed.
Yeah. The Bellamy boys saved us.
The Bellamy boys saved us. Always use protection, Jason. Always use protection. If you're sending a Trojan, sorry, our Trojan barrier, suit up, spacesuit, yeah. Your evil infections cannot reach us.
I like the AK-47.
The AK-47.
It's an oldie but a goodie.
An oldie but a goodie. Right, but we've got to talk about mummies, Chris. Mummy, right?
Okay.
Have they finally found Cleopatra? Oh no, it's Nefertiti they haven't found yet, isn't it? Have they found Cleopatra? I don't know. Cleopatra's found, didn't she?
I don't know, because she went running off, didn't she?
Miss Cleo. The
Miss Cleo,
original
Miss
one.
Cleo.
The first one. Cleo 1.
Cleo 1.
You know, Cleopatra. Well into singing she were.
Cleopatra. Famous beauty coming at ya. Cleo. Guys all go gaga for me.
So none mummies from Cleo, Miss Cleo, no Miss Cleo mummies. I thought they found a new female pharaoh, didn't they?
Yes. That's conveniently shares the name of a deity and has never been listed on any royal lists.
Well, originally they thought that about Hatshepsut, didn't they? That was apparently a modern discovery that we've known about for fucking ages. These Channel 5 documentaries that would have you believe that no one knew about that. Oh, new discovery. In reality, it's the patriarchy, isn't it, Chris?
That's the patriarchy, definitely.
We knew about that for a while, but they thought, wait a minute, we can't be having female pharaohs. Or there'll be one in the vote as well. I'm afraid they've already got the vote. Damn it, see what happens. That's what they thought, innit? Well, maybe they've just taken a goddess and they've demoted her now to a pharaoh. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
She's got a nice mask, though, hasn't she? Gold mask.
Yeah.
They found one of them.
And 300 other mummies living in the same caves.
Royal subjects, innit?
Wasn't me, so it's all good.
Oh, that's fine.
Not found my body
they did
yet.
Find one of me once. They found one of me once. Is Googleable. It turns my stomach just thinking about it. The bad old days. Right. Any questions or anything like that? Well, someone implied a death had occurred in the last podcast, then uploaded a 90-minute video of him talking to himself. You're talking about the emergency broadcast, right? When the ship goes down, there's an emergency broadcast, isn't there? Which basically got triggered by the fact that we never recorded a podcast that week. It's nice to know that even should we die, we do think about you guys and girls and things in between. And we still have content for you, even from beyond the grave, much like our friend Lady Snake.
To-do.
Jason assumed the worst. Assumed the worst, what? That things had been cancelled? The Fausty wishes had been cancelled? Don't worry. WTF was that? I don't know, Petulant One. I'm not there in the room with you. Have you heard a rapping and a knocking again? Are the spirits after you?
I think it was that clip you just played, Liam.
Clip? What clip? What did you say they found your body, and is it Googleable where? Yes, they did find something related to me from a previous life. It was not very nice, in fact. But one thing they don't talk about with previous lives is that, well, they do talk about this in sci-fi and shit, don't they? If you like go back in time and meet yourself and you touch each other, then apparently like the universe goes kabam or something like that. In reality, that's not really the case. But when you interact with some things that are very, very close to you from a previous life, it can end up with baggage. You see, when one thing's close to another thing, like a smelly person and upholstery, the upholstery tends to absorb the smell of the smelly person. I know that because I've shared an office with a smelly person before. I can attest to that. It gets in the fabric. Chris, like people that smoke, in it, they smell of fags and cigarettes, and it just gets in everything. Well, when I have a life and I have another life and I'm quite close adjacent to that life with things, I find that it affects my current life, even though it was a previous life. You see, the system, as great as it is, there are always cracks and flaws in any system. You know, that's why computers crash, much like the old washing thing. I'm not talking about hygiene for you neo-pagans out there that don't wash. I know, don't worry about that. I'm talking about the washing through in between lives and such. Doesn't always.
Don't you just cover it up with patchouli?
Well, the neo-pagans cover up the smell with patchouli, but we're talking about reincarnation washing at this point.
Oh, okay.
Which doesn't really cope with you if you're particularly psychic either. But no, I've had proper traumas in my life that are nothing to do with this life. They're from previous life. You know? Like pizza that you leave and forget about and then it goes moldy. Chris, you probably know about that, don't you? You're one of these people that buy like 2 pizzas and stuff and keep one for the next day. Have you ever put one on the side and it slid behind the dishwasher or something?
No. That suggests that there's ever leftover pizza, Liam. Look at the size of me.
That was fucking stupid. Where? Michelle wants to know private information about me. Well, no, sorry. I'm not telling you about the toe fiasco.
Toes.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. It still creeps me out. I can feel it right now. Let's not draw attention to it. I don't want to think about it, right? Too much attachment. What are we talking about, Chris, today? Are we talking about move over Miss Cleo, move her over at Chetsu? There's a new bitch in town.
Something like that. Yeah. She's called Neith.
Neith. Like Neith the goddess, the old one, who I'm really good friends with, by the way. So just saying, people who understand that, or they won't understand it. But a lot of people that do understand it, or now, well, wait a minute, I don't want to mess with Liam if he's friends with her. Yes. When all the young ones misbehave, you go to mummy or spank them. Yeah. What's the best way to pick an Egyptian god to arbitrarily worship? Oh, no, that's a good one.
It's called Flipping Through an Egypt Book, isn't it?
I doth have an Egyptian book somewhere.
I was just going to say, there must be one.
There we
There
go.
must be one on my shelf.
I got that one. Is that good?
That's a good one. I like the Thames and Hudson ones.
I like the Thames and Hudsons. They've released the other two that we wanted, the Japanese and
Japanese
Chinese
one.
ones, I think. Yeah. We look through and we think, oh, do I like the look of that one? Do I like the look of that one? And then we casually read a little bit about it. Horus. Okay. I quite like owls and birds and that. I know I'll worship that one. No, wait. I can't worship that one because all the cool kids, they're all worshipping Isis and going on about Isis. Therefore, I'll become a devotee of Isis. Isis, I'm in crisis. Send Jason the man that is the nicest.
Now he's sucking up.
If it gets you somewhere, Chris, it gets you somewhere in life.
I would never lower myself.
You'd never take the knee?
No.
No? No.
No.
Never take the knee, no?
No.
Not even if they put a cushion or a futon or something down?
Oh dear.
You're saying I can't jump straight to Bast. Well, how many cans of tuna should Okay, Chris, you can take this from here. I'm going to read me Egyptian book, okay?
Yeah.
It's less dangerous.
You're all very lucky. I left mine locked outside. So, she's not going to jump up and cause some issues. Which was totally by accident. But mainly because Sethmet kept trying to get involved in one of the consultations earlier. So, but she is the old destroyer of worlds. Anyway, why are you skipping on Bast? What's so scary about Bast, Liam?
I think it's what she's connected to. I think we don't need any of that today.
No, we don't need any of that today.
It's supposed to be a show for children, isn't it? Oh, by that I mean baby witches.
Oh,
of course.
All of them asking their childish questions.
Yeah, well, they know they're trying to G you up, Chris. They know that insulting things and asking silly questions like arbitrarily picking a goddess or a god or something to worship, they always go to the famous ones. Normally Isis. Is all of this goddess worship lark, isn't it?
Mm. Bast is often forgotten, though, interestingly.
I'm not surprised, though, to be fair.
Too many contradicting factors, I think, for them to be able to find the right correspondences for.
A lot of neo-pagans like cats, though, don't they? If they're not into dogs, they're normally into cats.
Yeah, but they always pick Sethmet, don't they? The one that's least likely to work with them. But I think that's kind of the theme, isn't it?
I don't worship anything famous, says the petulant one. Chris, are we insulted by that?
Yeah, we're very famous.
We're infamous. I suppose we're not famous. We'd have to do some real bad crimes to be famous, wouldn't we?
Who wants to be famous anyway? Infamy is far better.
Well, these days, I mean, I suppose you're not really in good company to be famous, are you?
Infamy. They've all got it, infamy. Sorry. It's all the Carry On Cleopatra background that you've got going on, Liam.
Oh, Cleopatra. There is a story of Cleopatra.
Another brother, he's an okay geezer, but never told of my love for Julius Caesar.
She liked to shag about, didn't she? She was always... How many brothers did she get through?
She was an independent woman. Leave her alone.
2 brothers. and Julius Caesar.
Mhm. Mark Antony.
She got rid of Julius. I don't know. She got rid of. There was a brother, and then did Julius Caesar come? Oops, did I say that? Sorry, this is the family show. There was the brother or a half brother or something like that. I'm pretty sure then it was Julius Caesar, and then it was another brother. And then who else was it? And then it ended with Mark Antony. I'm pretty sure there was another brother in between.
Had Caesar's child and hoped that he'd be crowned king. My bro said no, I said oh, and I murdered him.
That was it. She shared the crown with one of her brothers, I think. And then
Yeah.
she got with Julius Caesar, right? And then they were going to have a baby, but it didn't all pan out.
I think the Ptolemies did a lot of brother-sister pairs
Yeah.
rather than singular monarchs. They were kind of pairs of pharaohs. But Egypt was getting a bit weak by that point. The Ptolemies
Well, the
fucked it all
Ptolemies,
up.
it's all the fucking Ptolemies, wasn't it?
I blame
mean-
Alexander. Shouldn't have given them power in the first place.
I blame Ramesses III.
You blame him for everything. What's your
I
beef
don't. I
here?
just blame him for dying and leaving the power vacuum. I mean, that's what happens when you outlive your children and your children's children. Suddenly, in a very superstitious, culture, they think you're invincible and you're never gonna die, right? Especially if you proclaim yourself a god, as the pharaohs often do. And then when you do die, people are all disappointed and they're like, WTF, what the fuck are we going to do now? And then there's infighting and then it's just collapsed from down there. But no, I would definitely blame I'd blame Ramesses III.
Oh, sorry. I was just getting involved in the chat that's occurring. Jason asked Pixie if that makes not worshipping famous people makes her a hipster. And Michelle said, Pixie worships someone. You don't know them. They don't go to the school. But yes, they're having a little chat in here, Liam. I don't like that the limelight's being stolen. Petulant Pixie says she's never been hip or cool. Apparently Michelle's behind on the times. I get what I want and then I bin it.
Well, I can attest to that. I've heard the stories of the petulant one. So, why does so many people claim Cleopatra as a past life? I think it's because they cannot be famous in this life. Usually, a lot of these people are somewhat fugly, yeah?
Oh, I thought it was about Horcruxes, Liam.
No, I think it's just to do with low self-esteem issues and wanting to be powerful and special. That's never going to happen in this life. It would take a low-carb diet. Therefore, they'll claim it in a past life that will hopefully have carryover onto this life. What other comments do we have? Oh, I want to be Cleopatra in my next life. What a woman. What do you like about Cleopatra, Helen? What do you like about Cleopatra? What is it that draws you? Is it all the incest? Is it the gold?
Cleopatra coming at you. I think it's the baths in ass milk.
Ah, yes, milk. There was me thinking she's just got a thing for Mark Antony.
Maybe, but I think Mark Antony was a bit fugly.
Well, he was Roman.
Poker face smiles only when I see a man who takes my fancy like, oh, Mark Antony.
We should reshoot that with Helen. I've run out of clips now. What a shame. I'm going to have to revert to the Lady Snake ones.
Well, what happened to those cat ones, Liam, that you did?
Oh, I haven't got the cat ones.
Oh, did you get rid of them?
For season 3. If there is a season 3. This is the penultimate episode.
Yeah, then it's all over.
I think it is, isn't it? This is episode 30. The Ptolemies of 30 BC.
Maybe we need to be less Fausty.
Michelle somewhat sadistic and masochistic nature is coming out. I was probably, I'll read it the way she intended it in her head. I was probably a slave repeatedly. Oh, it's irritating. But I'm not anymore. Jason says most of my past lives were spent as grains of sand or arse hairs. People here have some really interesting fetishes, don't they?
They do.
Hmm.
It's all that time Jason spends on Bellamy, I think.
Do you
Although
think
you
it
wouldn't.
pays for a subscription, or do you think he
Although
just
on
goes
Bellamy, I don't think you'd find a single arse hair, would you? Aren't they all like smooth twinks?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me see if I can have a look.
No, Liam, that wasn't an excuse for you to do research.
I'm
in
doing
inverted
serious
commas.
research.
No, not research.
Fucking safety net. Right, let me go on an incognito tab. Wait a minute. Bellamy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. I've set him off again.
Or BellamyOnline.website. Right.
Anyway,
I've never bothered to read this. It actually comes up with an ad. Come closer to the breathtaking Bellamy boys. Gorgeous twinks and jocks in HD gay porn. Thousands of hardcore pics, hundreds of videos, weekly updates. I think that's the one, isn't it?
well, Jason says vintage Bellamy features lots of fuzzy bums.
Oh no, it's loading up videos. Does that mean it's going to broadcast?
Please don't.
Fucking hell. Yes, right. I can confirm after doing the research that there is some people with hair, right?
Oh, okay.
But there's two varieties. Okay, Bellamy boys come in two varieties, right?
Victims and perpetrators.
No, that's that website you watch. That's that men.com website, right? This one, it's normally about either they're more twinks or they're more jocks. Okay, the jocks is normally the more masculine ones. They're normally the top, right? And then the twinks are normally more.
Are they a top or are they a top?
They're more the kind of bottom type, right?
Yeah, but my question, Liam, is still: are they a top or a top?
They'll be whatever you want them to be if you give them money. I'm sure, Chris, they'll do whatever you want. Your wildest imaginationings.
I don't think so, Liam. What's okay? Trying to get back onto topic, Liam.
Furry fuzzies bait. Oh, sorry. Have we got a question? An actual question? What
real
spirits
question
do you think are present and facilitating this conversation? I don't currently feel possessed.
I would imagine one of the Bellamy boys from the vintage ones has like died from too much cocaine and is then trying to come through Liam, probably.
Well, we have got a little bit of something going on.
Oh dear, you're trying to balance yourself out.
I am trying. I'm doing some work. Okay, I'm doing some work.
Is that to replace your Benjamin Button regime?
She's a very big part of the Benjamin Button spell. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought as much.
She was my starting point for it. She helped me plan it all. She's really rather sexual, don't you know? Well, you would, wouldn't you?
I know very well.
You know Venus very well. Are we spilling too many occult secrets? I can't imagine we spilled too many occult secrets. Yeah. There's probably a joke in there, something to do with crusty socks, but I'm not entirely sure. Right, okay, so what would you like to talk about, Mr. Chris? The Ptolemies? How they fucked everything up? Are we talking politics? Are we talking history? Are we talking magic? What are we talking about?
Whatever the room reads, especially because this is the penultimate Fausty, so they need to get it all out of their system. as quickly as possible. Because otherwise they're going to have blue balls until we do a season 3. If we do a season 3.
I'm not really a fan of these quickie things, right? It's not really, no. Short films, everyone knows short films are shit, right? Trilogies, where's that? Everyone likes a trilogy.
Yeah, but you don't want to wait 6 years for them all to come out, Liam. That's the problem. There's got to be a balance to be had. I prefer these new bingeable marathon mini-series.
So what you're saying is a quickies, but many in succession?
Not quickies, as in you get to the end faster than you were originally, but through lots of extra content. But they normally cost millions of pounds per episode nowadays to make those happen. But I'm worth the money.
What, you want a mini series on Netflix all about you?
No, I really don't.
Imagine if that happened in another, if Netflix is still around, it might be holographic Netflix is still around in like 100 years' time and we're dead. Do you think they could imagine if they did like some research and stuff and they did like a Netflix mini holographic series or something about us? Wouldn't that be cool? Who do you think they get to play the role of Jason?
The thing is, luckily, we don't ever really film kind of below the neck. So they could put our heads on any person they liked, really.
Oh my gosh, we're actually having serious questions now. Was it true that Cleopatra put the Nazis to shame when it came to brutalizing and studying women's reproductive systems under her order? Chris, you're the classicist and you know a lot about history and that. Did you know Cleopatra did this?
Don't know.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, it's a very late period. I don't think we cope well with the late period.
No, like I say, I don't like the Ptolemies. They bore me.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you support a football team and that football team start being unbelievably shit and embarrassing, you kind of just pretend you have always supported another football team. And I think the Ptolemies, if they were a football team, would be a terrible one. You'd never admit to it. I've always wondered where Coptic magic fits into the Hermetic Greek, Gnostic, Egyptian magic spectrum in terms of origins. Oh. Pleb magic, isn't it?
It's what?
Pleb magic.
Coptic magic is not pleb magic.
Would you not class it as pleb magic?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Coptic is kind of where the Abrahamics kind of slip into the indigenous Greeks.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's kind of, how's the best way to put it?
Pleb magic.
It's clean Egyptian.
Clean?
Like, yeah, as it, so kind of sterile. Is that a better word for you, Liam?
Sterile?
It's sterile Egyptian.
Well, I don't know. Sterile Egyptian sounds very bland.
It is very bland. It's basically the cartoon script version of a real life story.
Jason agrees. He says that it is a bit plebby. Haha.
Well, I'm not going to correct you on the word plebeian, but carry on.
It is a bit plebby.
Well, we use the word pleb in the wrong context, but I won't bore you all with Roman history because we're doing the Egyptians today.
All right, let's do some Egyptians. What Egyptians do you want to start with? What's your favorite Egyptian? You can't pick yourself because that don't count.
I don't know. I like the New Kingdom.
Is that because they had all the pretty stuff? They had a bit of
Had-
money then, didn't they?
They had a lot of the pretty stuff, yeah.
Oh. I thought you'd be more pre-dynastic.
Mm.
Or is that rude to say such things?
Well, it probably is rude because you probably meant it rude because you're a Fausty prick.
I didn't mean it. I like pre-dynastic. I mean, everyone loves a good origin story, don't they? All about a good origin story. Michelle Miller, I think, is trying to give away secrets here. According to Liam's video on the Egyptian mysteries, which I never did, by the way, it's fruitless to try to get into them. Well, essentially, this is true. Yes, I would agree with that. That's probably why I said something along the lines of that in a video I may or may not have made at some point. Yeah.
I think the point is more, you're either part of the club or you're not.
Yeah, so you have to ask yourself, then you're not part of the club. Everyone knows that if you're part of the club, you're forever trying to run away from it. Our resident expert, Mr. Chris, would attest to that, wouldn't you? Some gates and doors are best left closed.
Mm. Mainly because they're booby trapped.
Booby trapped with real boobs. Scary. Scary.
Bang.
Yeah. Didn't see that in an Indiana Jones film, did you? Indiana Jones in the Temple of Boob.
Yeah.
It's
Temple
like when
of
you know you have the axes and that like swoosh down, you've got to run through it. It's just so fucking massive knocker. It's just like, and that one where he runs away and there's like this big boulder following, it's running away. It's just like running away and just takes him out. It's even worse when it starts secreting the milk, Chris. Floods, you know, Temple of Doom, and it just like floods milk.
Wow.
What else have we got? Who's that one from the Bible that could throw fire and turn staves to snakes?
I think he meant slaves.
Slaves to snakes. Wasn't that Moses? Are they talking about Moses?
Staves to snake. Throwing down a
I
stave.
thought staves as in sticks.
Yeah.
As in
Moses did this. I don't remember the throwing fire bit. Was that in the uncut version?
Maybe. Director's cut.
Director's cut version. But the stick into snakes, that was Moses, definitely. Before them plagues happened.
Yes, that was the miracle. Not miracles. Yeah, the miracles and that where he took on the Egyptian priest class. Try and prove that there is but one God, and that God is better than the many gods of Egypt and such. They had a little contest, magical contest. They had a witch wars long before we did a witch wars. There was apparently witch wars in Egypt, according to the Bible. You could read about it
in the Bible.
Many Christians would not like you participating in witch wars, where you can fucking tell them in the Bible there was a witch wars. I merely partake of in that which Moses partake of in. We could do a biblical witch wars. We get people to transform things into snakes and shit and turn the Nile red again. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Especially on one of those cruises. That would be funny. That would basically probably manifest as some sort of terrorism, no doubt.
What, rivers of blood?
Essentially in Egypt, yeah.
It might, yeah, I was going to say something uber political.
You
There,
were
not going to do that.
Really bad about extermination, cockroaches, and infestations.
Bless you.
One shouldn't do that or talk about such things. It's really rather rude, Chris. Purists are frowned upon since the whole Nazi thing, Chris.
Oh, okay. You missed this bit. Jason said it's always seemed the ceremonial types tend to overlook it. I think that's Coptic magic, while they cream themselves over the GMP.
That's probably quite true, yeah.
So, but I think also part of it is because the Coptic stuff is when most of it gets overlooked, generally speaking, which is probably why you misuse the word pleb. But the
I
nice,
misuse words on purposely all the time.
the bit I like about the Coptic stuff is what's going on during the Coptic is there's a real melging pot of all the Abrahamics coming together. So you've got the kind of the Jewish, the Christian, and the Muslim, the Islamic stuff all mixing up together, and it's really a golden age that we then later be called the Dark Ages because we don't want to talk about those Islamics being all clever and stuff because that's bad for business.
Like Christmas 2002, my family don't talk about it.
You know, where we get all that algebra and all that really clever mathematics stuff from.
Algebra, the numbers and the letters are actually numbers, and oh my gosh.
I imagine that's a bit of a minefield for you, isn't it?
It is, I tell you what.
Does it give you the shakes?
It's crazy, isn't it? It's mental. Please do a biblical witch wars. I can pull on my lives as nuns and priests. Okay.
Basically, I don't understand why shagging all those choir boys is going to help her in any kind of witch wars myself.
Well, it depends on what the witch wars is all about.
Oh.
We could do a witch wars where people that emit the most ectoplasm win.
That's awful, Liam.
Well, of a paranormal nature, isn't it? Ectoplasm. I mean, who gasms these days? You know, none of the McDonald's psychics seem to do it these days, do they? I mean, it was big during the Victoria era, all this ghostly gasms and such. You know, you don't see a lot of it nowadays. She says we don't talk about it. We don't talk about that, Chris, but I can say it come in handy a few times. And yes, Coptic magic feels more like organized chaos than the highly regimented Western ceremonial approaches.
It's more Venusian, that's why they don't talk about it.
Yes, more than likely.
It's far more Venusian than they want to give it credit for. So what do we do? Make the women stupid.
Well, off of the back of some things that may or may not be discussed in this episode, there's another witch wars just around the corner. So talking about Egyptian mysteries and mysteries of cultures that you are in this life not part of, there's obviously a big fascination towards mystical interest in things, isn't there? I mean, Egyptians obviously got a really, really, really big and popular with the Victorians because of all the, you know, Howard Carter and tombs being found in gold and all that sort of stuff, really exciting things. And all the mysterious kind of, well, I was going to call them cave paintings, but that would be rude. Hieroglyphics. Hey, there's cave paintings too. Isn't there? In the old bit. The old bit, no one talks about it because there's not enough gold in that bit, isn't it? It's all about the cash for gold these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
That, and I think the powers that be in Egypt, they disliked lots and lots of talk and such with the pre-dynastic period, but then it's currently controlled by a lot of Muslim people when they very much dislike alternate history according to what might be a bit somewhat iffy for their religion. Politics, essentially.
The other part that's quite interesting about the Coptic part is you've got a lot of female priests. So in kind of Christian setup. So I imagine that's also something that's not wanted to be talked about. Because there are parts of it that refer, you know, kind of the post-Byzantine kind of influx of kind of the female gospels and things like that. They're all a bit questionable and we can't talk about that. They ain't got no penises.
Well, it's yeah, I mean, it's the most exciting times. And do you think that that is the times that Christianity is probably going to revert back to, or do you just think that it's going to die out?
I think it's more likely to die out than it is to go back to that kind of sweet spot that it had before. But I think part of that is because the other the other developments, like Islam's in a very different place than it was then. It was still new and fresh and up and coming. Whereas they're going through their kind of, religious wars phase. So,
What is it that they call it? Not a Renaissance. Enlightening? The Enlightenment? I don't know. They refer to it as a certain thing, don't they? I can't remember what it's called.
I'm not sure,
yeah.
but I imagine there is a word for the phase it's going through. But yeah, whereas like, at that point, Jewish mysticism has kind of got as far as it was going to go. And I suppose too, in some ways, that's kind of why that's the dominant part of ceremonial magics, is that kind of, it was the oldest at the time. So therefore that kind of carries through, because that how much the patriarchy love a pedigree. So, there's that kind of, which is very appropriate because we're talking about Egypt and the, incest in order to keep lines clean. So, yeah, so I think part of it is that I don't think those individual parts are in the same place as they were then, that had that kind of really magical part. So kind of having that all kind of happen all at the same place in what was quite a liberal place by comparison to the rest of Europe, Europe at that point. There was that free and easy exchange in Africa that isn't happening anymore. Before imperialism chopped it all up into pieces, and stopped everyone talking to one another. But so yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure it's possible. I think it's more likely that Christianity would phase itself out rather than. I think what's interesting is I don't think Islam will get the chance to be the dominant one either. It's not like I don't feel like it'll ever take over. If anything, I imagine we're all more likely to go back to Judaism than we are to take one of the other two, if we're going to go, match chances.
Well, a hybrid. It's going to be potentially a Jewish-Christian hybrid is the last domination of that Abrahamic, let's say, tradition. This depends what the Mesopotamians want to happen at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, factory reset is not their idea. So we'll see if the Mesos get all uppity about it, and then it could be bye Abrahamics full stop. But we'll see. Yeah, I think it's a tricky one to kind of map that out. It can go too many different ways at the moment. And you know me, I don't like peaking at the end. So I don't mind looking at my history, but everybody else's is a bit boring.
So how does this help the would-be, wannabe, a magical practitioner then? With regards to looking at, do you think that there is a cut-off point where people look and try to draw inspiration from or pull knowledge from? Because if you look at, some of the best alchemical texts and such might be written in German. Are you going to go and learn German for that? Probably not. But what about things that are written in English if you're an English-speaking person? If you speak English, is it much point in going past 20th century previous? Is it worth going past a decent translation of Heinrich Agrippa? Is there much point in going to the East and studying, cultural influences and stuff from there. Where would you say holds is probably for the average Western person? Where do they put their energies into to find out and push themselves more within magic from a cultural perspective?
I, not to give a completely Venusian answer, but to kind of like explore the space that they're in rather than necessarily looking elsewhere. I think actually the integration with what is here or in your space is far more interesting than kind of veering off in another direction. There is that kind of grass is greener kind of, wish that everybody goes for, thinking, oh, it's better over there because it's not here. Whereas actually, I think if you dig deep enough, there is so much to be found in the space that you're actually in. Would probably be what I would say. Exploring yourself further and having those joined up experiences kind of beyond solar self kind of allows you to kind of experience, amalgamate and make decisions based on a wider net of your own experiences. Yeah, I don't know. People kind of tend to see that as kind of running a very narrow path, whereas actually, between here and there. Whereas actually, I think you can go down or you can go up. Those are your choices. Are kind of better than everybody's always looking out there. But we'll see. I don't know.
Here in America, it's hard to say how the Norse problem would allow for any Christian synthesis. The old Christianity is too useful until you know who gets here. Well, it's simple. People starve to death. So don't think that everyone's necessarily going to make it. It's rural places with nothing, no industry, nothing, then they can quite easily just be cut off and completely destroyed. The backwaters, I think they call them. Not relevant, but noticed on your Egyptian background, there's a drawing that looks like a slug over a bowl. Is that really what it is? So that would be, there would be that one there. Oh, I've gone in full screen mode. Don't know how I did that. Basically next to, between Anubis and the king, I'm presuming that's the king that's being crowned, or an initiate of the Wiccan tradition from way back when, Chris, presumably. That, I believe, is a horned snake.
Yeah,
there are horned snakes that were quite nasty. Actual snakes with horns. You can probably Google them. I think it's a pronunciation of a name, I would guess. F? Don't know. My modern ancient Egyptian is not what it used to be. Can you explain modern ancient Egyptian, Chris? What's the concept of this? Is it just a piss take, or is there some scientific relevancy?
Other than trying to trigger me, I don't know what else you're trying to do.
Well, I'd like some education. I'd also like to trigger, because I'm very trigger happy on the Fausty Witch's Shell. So, if you could throw papers up in the air and knock something over out of rage, that would be brilliant. It would really make the episode, I think.
I'm not promising that. Modern Egyptian is a trigger point for me, but that's mainly because of how they try to justify it. They have a tendency to look at language as linear, which I really struggle with. And there's a TikToker that speaks about half a dozen dead languages, who's constantly correcting people on their pronunciation of words. Bearing in mind it's a system with no vowels in its writing form. So basically it's filling the gap with whatever they feel is relevant. I struggle with it, but that's mainly because people like to suggest there is a direct link between how Egyptian is spoken now as modern Egyptian and how it would have sounded then, bearing in mind you have all these melting pots of languages. And even if you were to just completely disregard dialect as existing between melting pots of places talking, you can't suggest, it's like when they try and link Welsh to Celtic language directly, as if it's a complete, there is a direct line from one to the other. Whereas actually there's just as much in common with how the Yam Yams speak around here and Black Country kind of dialect as there is to do with the Welsh language. But, God forbid anybody suggested they were even remotely related to one another. But anyway, this is why you trigger me with this, is because people, particularly linguists, like to talk about language like it's not an art form, like there is a strict science to it.
Or alive.
Particularly because, it doesn't help when individuals like yourself like to talk about communication is entirely mercurial, which really doesn't help.
Is often considered to be ruled by Mercury.
Yes, but mainly through its
I say
delivery.
communication, and I don't necessarily say language, but communication. If you look at that, if you're wanting to nitpick and break that apart, how would we view communication? How do we understand communication? We normally understand it as logically, from a logical perspective. Therefore, Mercury's logical. Therefore, I believe it comes from that. How would Mercury translate an abstract painting? Because there's language in that. Would Mercury be able to do it? But in order for someone to teach someone, like these fucking curators in museums, this bit of pink splots on this big canvas, this means this, you can feel the artist through that. Waffle and bullshit. Because you see, the person looking at it, they don't see that. They see something else. Or they just see a canvas with bullshit on it. Whereas the mercurial one, they're trying to get you to appreciate the art by giving you and weaving a story together. That's very mercurial.
Yeah, I would argue otherwise, in the sense that I would argue you could clearly say mathematics is mercurial. So numbers are mercurial in that kind of sense of there is a strict science to them that can be bent but not broken in order in true maths, kind of mathematics. Whereas language is kind of that space between the two. A language's structure is given by Mercury, where Venus actually produces its nuance. And those two things have to both exist for language to actually work as a form of communication. If there was a strict science to it, language would never evolve. And if it was entirely mercurial, it would just have a perfect form and we would all speak its perfect form. So yeah, there is that kind of part of perfect exists in both of those places, but people don't think about perfect mercurial versus perfect Venusian as purists.
Humans, we view things as a lens, and what happens is they need to equate something. Therefore, language is therefore ruled by Mercury, because communication is ruled by Mercury, because that's the most useful that we see in society. We see communication and language as a way of talking, and therefore we need to all be on the same page. Whereas, if you look at it through another lens, like a Venusian lens or something like that, you might see language as creative. You might even see it as unique, potentially, which is very opposite to what most people would want to view language, whether they're right or not. They would want to view it as, it's just so that people can talk and communicate and therefore be on the same page. Modern ancient Egyptian is a joke, essentially, because what we're talking about how can you generalize from something over so vast a time, and then so many different dialects from different places, and then say this is the correct way of saying it. The dictionary definition of this. We all know the dictionary is bullshit. You know, it's something that we kind of pretend a little bit, but we know is mainly bullshit. Hence why there's the Urban Dictionary, because the dictionary is not good enough. But modern ancient Egyptian is the joke that, well, you're not there and you're not speaking to anyone that was there. How do you know? Well, you don't. You're kind of saying I know based on this, that, and the other, and working it out. That's a very, like you would say, mercurial way of looking at it. But modern ancient Egyptian is that all dead languages were alive at once, at one time. Where else are we going with this? So yeah, I think that was about the slug and hieroglyphics, wasn't it? Which was actually a horned snake, which they would normally probably say was a thar or something like that, I expect.
Thank you, Helen, for actually being totally relevant without realizing you were relevant.
If you want to learn ancient magic, ask something ancient like a tree or a mountain in your own backyard. I think the issue with that, Jason, is some people can't listen to the response. So it's about obviously developing that. But most people these days wouldn't take the time to do that, I think. I'd like to hear more about this secret 4th degree wicked Egyptian initiation ritual. Is it something we can buy from Thoth? ? I don't believe it is something that you can buy from us. We don't sell that sort of shite. However, no doubt, much like when I read Kabbalah, Witches Kabbalah, it was about calling in a tree of life into the quarters. Okay, go to the north, tree of life, call in. I actually read this in an actual book. And in fact, I was so very close to saying out loud that it was such a load of bullshit. What I didn't realize until just before I was about to say something was the author of that book was sitting literally right next to me. It was me, Ronald Hutton. Then there was the author that actually wrote the book that was there, and then there was a bunch of other people on the other side of the room, and then there was Lady Poison over there looking at me because she apparently thinks that she can tell exactly what I'm thinking by my facial expressions. And the guy was talking about his book, and I was like, and I looked at it, and literally it had like a pentagram, and it had quarters, and it had a tree there, tree there, tree there, and tree there, because they can only view things through their small, tiny little wicked minds, which basically meant, well, we call in the quarters. I suppose with this Jewish Kabbalah thing, there's got to be quarters in it. What are we going to call in? Well, they like this tree of life thing. Let's just call one of them in. But yes, you cannot buy that 4th degree wicked Egyptian initiation ritual. You cannot buy any Egyptian initiation rituals from us, I'm afraid. If you would like to be initiated into some form of ancient Egyptian family, let's call it that, you'll have to go back in time. It's probably the easiest way, and even then we cannot guarantee.
Can't guarantee access.
Somewhat. Well, in some ways, I mean, it's like modern times, like getting into a really good school. Sometimes you just need the breeding, the family name, and the money. Other times you just need really good grades. It really depends. Sorry. I agree with Chris on Mercury versus Venus connection on communication. That's good. Third option, difficulties with communication can be purposefully ambiguous and still be mercurial. Codes, I suppose, are mercurial because there's a code to be cracked, codex, all that kind of thing. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because we're out of time.
I was going to say, a lot of the best ones, though, are based on natural forms, like the Fibonacci.
Sequence. Or Fibonacci sequence, innit? P.S. Find Robert Langdon. But that's it. I'm afraid we're all out of time. Will there be another Fausty Witches? Is there going to be a 31, episode number 31, or are we scrapping that? I can't remember, because we were going to have someone booked in, weren't we?
Yeah, so it depends. We were talking about potentially launching Witch Wars 7 instead.
Instead of Fausty Witches, the last episode of Fausty Witches? We'll see. Well, Either this is the penultimate episode or this is the actual episode. Either way, Helen says this isn't relevant either, unless accidentally. But if time isn't linear, why does everyone claim to be something from the past? Shouldn't previous lives also include things from the future? Yes, Helen. We are always talking about that when it comes to past life readings and past life regression. Don't we always say that, Chris? It's bullshit. You pull from the past, the present, and the future all at once. And yes, Helen, you have hit the nail on the head right there. If they're actually pulling information from and doing regression and such and pulling in and connecting to other aspects of themselves, you are right. They should be getting things from the past and they should be getting things from the future as well. Helen is a fucking genius.
She just needs to realise it.
She just needs to realise it. Anyway, we've been the Fausty Witches. There may or may not be another episode of the Fausty Witches. If not, then there may be a Witch Wars competition. Who knows? What could happen? We might die in the process.
Might die again.
We might die. Who knows? Anyway, ta-ra for now is what they used to say on Art Attack, if you remember.